Welcome everyone in this new video tutorial about Diablo-like dungeon generator. So in the previous video we added 10 tiles to the dungeon, and I actually want 15 of them, but I also want my camera to be a bit further from the ground, even more than it was already. So I'm just going to say I want that to be 50,000. And if I'm hitting play, yep, I'm going to make that 40,000. I just want to make sure I can see everything. So I actually encountered a strange behavior where the dungeon was spawning 2 corridors in a row, but I did not manage to reproduce the bug, so I'm just going to leave that for now. And we are going to add another layer of metrics in the dungeon. So I mean, we are going to use another metric we created just to make sure it works. So if I'm saying I don't care about the maximum amount of corridors in a row, by just saying I can have 10 corridors in a row, can I encounter corridors? Yes, I can. So there are no limits to the number of corridors. It seems good. For the sake of the tutorial and for just being able to see the dungeon in one window, I'm just going to reduce that number to, let's say, uh, to 2. And I'm going to move on to the next metric. So the additional tile amount. So if I'm saying I want, I don't know, 5 additional tiles to spawn, how is it going to behave? So it's spawning additional tiles like that, and it's creating 3 ways in our dungeon. Before we weren't able to produce 4-way and 3 ways in our dungeon because we didn't specify we wanted extra connections. So for now we don't get any 3-way or 4-way except if we spawn additional tiles next to them, next to our generic tiles. So okay, additional tile metric seems to be working. And then we can move on to the minimum steps to start tile. We can only check that if I'm specifying 5 minimum steps to start tile and I'm specifying 7 tile amounts and I'm specifying 0 additional tiles just to isolate any bugs that might encounter. So is it generating dungeons that are closer? It's not. So it's never actually creating dungeons that are not where the end tile is not further than this. So I think we can only make that bug by specifying a number of extra connections. So we're going to do that real quick. We're going to say we want 3 extra connections. We want to hit play. And if I'm hitting play, it says it reroll dungeon several times. But it seems to be working. We are never getting dungeons that are smaller than what we want, and if we specify we don't care about the minimum amounts of steps to start tile, and if we hit play, can we have dungeons layouts that are the dungeon is too short for the minimum amounts of steps to start, but I specified I wanted 0 steps to start tile. But actually I shouldn't be able to specify 0. This should be minimum 1, I think. Just because 0 means you don't have any tile in your dungeon, and we don't want that to happen. We don't want to make that possible. So value range, we're just going to specify 1 and it's going, I think it shall be, I think it should be fixing that to 1, but it's not. And if I try to specify back to 0, I cannot. So it says 1 minimum tile to steps to sort tile. So if I'm hitting play once again, does it give us errors? No, it does not. But can we get small dungeons? I mean, by small, I mean, can we get an end tile that is pretty close to us? Yep, it actually, well, it's not really clear. It's not really clear, but I suspect, I think it's working. So we can safely assume it's working for now, even if some bugs might be lurking. So what do we want to do now? We want to add additional tile to the equation. And if I'm hitting play, it's spawning additional tiles. Alright, that's good. We can move on to the next metric. The corridors to end tile. We actually want 3 corridors to end tile. And that might be strange for the awkward for the generator to build, since we only specify we want 7 tiles. So this means it's actually trying to generate a dungeon with 4 tiles. Oh, so the amount of steps, the amount of corridors to end tile is not working, obviously. So in this case we have 2 corridors to the end tile, and we specified we want 3 of them, and it's clearly not working. So why is it not? We're going to check that real quick. So, and it's giving us errors. Phoenix spawning actor, reset level. We're going to try to generate a lot of levels without corridors to end tile, just to see if this no, we are actually going to check out our output log. And I actually want my output log to display the time, just to be able to, in that case, to be able to spot if the errors came from the last the last metric I tweaked, which was the corridors to end tile. So if I'm saying I want my editor preferences and I want timestamp, log timestamp UTC, we're going to close that. That's what I want. I want to clear the log. And I want to check out where is the corridors to end tile variable used. So we are using that variable in there. We are asking, is the tile spawn, are the tile spawn inferior or equal to tile amounts minus corridors to end tile. So I'm not sure why, if I'm specifying 3 in here, it should, well, because the bug might be somewhere else. So finding a random location for our end tile, we are finding the further location. Alright, we are randomly looping through the random further location in our dungeon. And then we are asking, do we have corridors to end tile? If yes, we actually try. That's where the bug occurred. I believe. We are not trying to. We are not actually trying to find room for end tile or discard. So we're actually. So this is the logic that find a room for the end tile. And we have something called check for corridor room, but it is not able to get a random. We cannot specify we want a random direction in here, and the end tile might be looking for random, might be random. So I think that's why it's not working. We cannot use the corridor to end tile feature if the end tile direction is random. That's what's not working. Because if I'm specifying this, we want the north, that's what I suspected. That's what I think might happen at the very beginning when we said we wanted 7 tile amounts. I think if I increase that number, it's just going to work right away. And it's going to give me 3 corridors in a row towards the end tile. And if I'm specifying I want 15 corridors to end tile and hitting play, I think it's always going to work as well. So we just want to create a protection for that sort of things. We want two things. We want the level to automatically disable the number of corridors to end tile, and we also want. How can we do that? Can we actually just say in here in our construction script corridors to end tile and end tile direction? Is this random? If so, we are going to set corridor to end tile equals 0, and we are going to print an error with 2R. Cannot specify a random end tile direction with a number of corridors to end tile. Like that, we're going to hit compile, hit save, go to our class defaults, go to the layouts, and if we say we want that to be random, if we hit compile, it's not resetting, excuse me, it's actually not resetting our metric. That's because if I'm looking at that's because this is a static class. If I'm looking at our instance of level generator in our hierarchy, and if I'm making our two variables public, corridors to end tile and end tile direction, then if I'm hitting compile, hitting save, if I'm going back in here in our layout, if I'm specifying north, I can specify 3, but if I'm specifying random, it's resetting the value. So it's good, but it's not what we want. It's not what we want. We just want the dungeon to behave normally. If if we specified a bad, so we're just going to create a temporary variable called registered amounts of end corridors to end. We're just going to call that this way. We want that to be an advanced display to hide it in our class defaults, tab. And then we want to say when we actually reset the layout, we actually want to set our corridors to end to a value equals to is end-tile direction equal to random. If so, we want the corridors to end to be equal 0. If not, we want it to be equal to corridors to end tile, like that. And we might want to throw an error, just in case. Just in case we forget that, oh no, we are actually not going to throw an error. We're just going to specify that in our tooltip variable tooltip. So corridors to end tile. This metric is not working if using a random end tile direction. Like this. We're good with that. Then what do we want to do? We actually want to wrap up that video. So I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I hope to see you guys in the next one. Bye bye.